Hey guys, DrizzyDrew98 here. I'm here to do a review of the new film, The Five Bloods. The Five Bloods is the newest film from legendary director Spike Lee. You know him from movies like Do the Right Thing, Malcolm X, and most recent 2018 release, BlacKkKlansman, which I gotta say, the year's release was one of my favorite movies of that year, and I continue to rewatch it just countless times. So Spike's newest entry into his legendary filmography is currently streaming on Netflix, originally planned for a Cannes film premiere and then a brief theater run to become eligible for awards and such, and then go to Netflix. Just finds itself straight on Netflix as a result of the coronavirus, which this isn't the only thing that's messed up, but I do gotta say, man, I wish I seen this film on the big screen. Just the scope, the scale, the emotion, just the action even. I wasn't even expecting that. I really wish I saw this on the big screen. So basically, the synopsis reads like this. 4 African-American vets battle the forces of man and nature when they return to Vietnam seeking the remains of their fallen squad leader and the gold fortune he helped them hide. So basically, we follow our 4 leads, played by Delroy Lindo, Clark Peters, Isaiah Whitlock Jr., and Norm Lewis as Paul, Otis, Melvin, and Eddie, respectively. So the 4 leads of this film were part of a 5-man 1st Infantry unit self-named the Bloods, and back in the day in the war, they were on this mission to locate this CIA plane that had gold payment to the Vietnamese natives that helped fight off the Viet Cong, and they locate the plane, and they locate the gold, and after the first attack, they decide to keep it from themselves. It's actually a very powerful speech from Chadwick Boseman, kind of talking about the atrocities and all the horrible shit, basically, that's been done to the African American people in the United States, and they decide to keep the gold and help redistribute it to their people. But unfortunately, the counterattack that happens later, Stormin' Norman, played by Chadwick Boseman, is killed in action, and the site is eventually napalmed, kind of destroying any landmarks, identifying landmarks, that being to help locate the gold again. So we jump to modern day, about 40 some odd years later, and the 4 finally have a location on the remains and the gold and decide they're going to go back for it. One of the ways that Spike differentiates the different tones and the time periods that the film takes place in is actually by changing the aspect ratio, which I thought worked really well. We start modern day Vietnam in the typical 2:3:5 film scope aspect ratio. Then when we go back to the Vietnam War, we go at a 4:3, actually shot in 16mm, which was pretty sweet. It actually immersed me more into that time period, and I felt it really did that part of the movie a lot of justice. And then when we go back to modern day Vietnam jungle, we jump to 1:7:8, which is the flat aspect ratio. And when we jump to that aspect ratio, that's really when I felt just so bad that I couldn't see this in theaters, because man, it was pretty much IMAX level quality from what I could tell. And I found these changes in aspect ratios, it wasn't just a stylistic choice. I felt that it was a story choice, and it really contributed to the immersion and the storytelling, personally for me. So present day, when you meet up with the Bloods, the remaining members of the Bloods that is, you really just buy into the chemistry and you buy into the friendship. And I feel like these are guys that have been through some shit together and have known each other for a really long time, and they have differing ideologies, but they still remain friends. And that kind of epitomizes what friendship is. I mean, you don't always agree with with your friends and like the same things and whatnot, but you remain friends nonetheless. And I felt that dynamic between the friends actually just got better and better as the film went on, and the stakes got higher and higher, and it really just helped to break any sort of maybe monotony you would have got if they were too like-minded. But I gotta say, the standout of this film by far for me was Delroy Lindo as Paul. That guy went to just another level, and I believe this performance of his was awards worthy. And if he does end up getting nominated, come back to this video, because I'm calling it. I think he is. At times you could just really just freaking just hate this guy, and he could just be just an asshole, to be frank. And I was just like, why are these guys even friends with him? And like, why do I even care what happens to this guy? And then there's certain scenes that help peel back the layers and show that he's a troubled, tortured person. He's a troubled, tortured soul. And there's a scene in particular that I won't spoil, but he kind of just breaks down, and I'm not going to lie, a couple tears drop. And one of the ways that they kind of show the complexity and humanize him a bit and give him a peek into his psyche is the introduction of his son David, played by Jonathan Majors, who was just fantastic in this film, in my opinion. And I thought the dynamic between them was fun and just heartbreaking at times, and I thought it really added this another layer to the film. And I thought with their relationship, we got to see, we got to peek into Paul's mindset, that it really felt like he never really left the war. Like, yes, his body left the jungle and he made it out alive, but his mind and all the shit that happened there, that came with him. He couldn't leave that in there. He couldn't leave that in the jungle. Like that programming that they do to the soldiers by saying, you know, people that look like this are the enemy, and that's very hard to shake, and sort of this learned hatred that he had, he just can't adjust. And he kind of represents the group of people that just walk that path of hatred and sadness and pain, no matter how much it hurts them, due to like their inability to change or stubbornness, or I don't know, but they choose to walk that path. And it just kind of shows the power of this programming and this learned hatred, that if you're told at a malleable age that this person, people look like this, they're the enemy, people look like that, they're bad, how hard it really is to shake that. And I thought it did a really good job of displaying that type of person. But it also doesn't excuse it, because the other remaining members of the Bloods don't walk that path. They're more aligned with love, acceptance, change, and I really like the contrast between both. But I never felt like these messages were being preached to me, or I didn't feel a heavy-handedness or beaten over the head with these messages. I felt like I was enlightened and educated and entertained, and that's due to Spike Lee's directing and his iconic style. And besides the messages and the heartfelt moments, there's some really fantastic action here that I wasn't expecting. There's a lot of great shootouts, and just the scope and the scale of everything, I knew exactly what was going on. There's not an overuse of shaky cam, and I thought it was very well done. But as you know, no film is without its flaws, and I'd like to just get those out of the way now so I can just keep gushing about how much I really enjoyed this film. One of the flaws being is sometimes I felt that the film kind of was biting a little bit more than it could chew at times, juggling the storylines and the pace and the different tones. And sometimes I felt that maybe we could have shaved some time off this being about 2.5 hours off of some of those storylines that I'm not going to say don't pan out, but I just feel like they weren't as interesting as the main through line of the film. But that's pretty much where my complaints and criticisms end, because I really enjoyed this film. I really loved the direction from Spike Lee. It felt inspired and honest and personal and just ambitious, and it felt like this is a very personal project to Spike and a story he needed to tell, and I'm glad he did, because this isn't a war movie that you typically get to see. This is a perspective that I think you don't get to see enough, and I think it's important that he told it. And across the board, the performances were really solid. Obviously, my standouts being Delroy Lindo and Jonathan Majors, but everyone is just on their A game here, and I felt a lot of emotion. I felt joy. I felt, I felt the stakes of the action. All the actors just did a really great job. And I'm a sucker for a great soundtrack, and Marvin Gaye is layered through this movie, and I'm a big Marvin Gaye fan, and I thought his music did a lot for the movie. I thought not only did it bring out joy and sadness and all those different emotions, it spoke on a lot of the same issues that the film was speaking on, and I felt that it was just a brilliant choice for this movie. And like I said before, the action set pieces were fantastic, and they're excellently filmed, and the colors just popped, and it was so vibrant in the scope, and I just really wish I could have seen this on the big screen. But also, as big as the movie can get, it was also very small, very personal, and very heartfelt at times, and there was some moments that were pretty emotional for me. And one of the aspects I almost forgot to mention that I absolutely loved, and I'm not sure if this was a story choice or budgetary constraint or whatnot, but they chose to use the modern day older veterans to play themselves in the flashback scenes with Norman, played by Chadwick Boseman. And I thought it was great, because I thought it helped you keep the familiarity with the actors that you're introduced in the beginning. And also, I thought, I don't know if I'm reaching, but it kind of just spoke to the fact that these 4 men were blessed and privileged enough to make it out of that jungle and become old men, whereas their leader Norman did not. And it was I thought it was very powerful. And also, I'd like to talk about Chadwick Boseman in this film. He's not in it a lot, but when he is in it, I think he makes his presence known. And he's actually quite inspiring. I believe a line in the film was, they said he was their Martin and their Malcolm. And I really felt that. He was kind of the spiritual guide of those characters. And long after he was gone, long after he was gone, he still had an effect on their mentality, on how they act and how they think and how they want to help their people. So I thought that was great too. And lastly, I loved the education on Black issues and supposedly antiquated issues that we see revealing themselves in this country again. I felt like this movie couldn't have been released at a better time. And I really think that you need to do yourself a favor and do yourself a service and check out this movie and kind of educate yourself and look at this war and look at this country from a different perspective. And before I go, I feel I'd be remiss to be talking about a Black film that talks about Black issues that's relevant to the horrible shit that we're seeing going on today without putting in the description below a couple of links to where you could donate if you can or help sign some petitions to help out the cause. So that's going to be it for my review of The Five Bloods. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd be so kind. And also, let me know down in the comments what you thought about the movie. I'd love to get a conversation going with you guys and see what you guys thought. That's going to be it for today, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.